Hi, I'm Rob Poyton. Thanks for joining me on the Dragon's Teeth Gaming channel today. Now, you may remember I was just recently at the Innsmouth Literary Festival. I thought we'd keep the Lovecraftian theme going, and today I'm delighted to welcome as a guest my co-organizer of that event and also my co-host on the Innsmouth Book Club and Strange Shadows podcasts. It's my old mate Tim Mendees. Hey Tim, how you doing?
Hello, Rob. How you doing? Yeah, I'm good, thanks. Yeah,
Yeah, good.
yeah,
Have you recovered from the festival yet?
just about, just about. My throat's still wrecked, but apart from that, I'm good. Yeah, I don't even want to think about what time I actually got back to the hotel on the night.
Yeah, it went on late into the night. It was that we
Mm.
had the Innsmouth After Hours pub event after, and then I suspect it continued on after that as well, didn't it?
Yeah, we went clubbing. That was comedy gold. The look on the bouncer's face as a drunk Mancunian goth and a bunch of people in Cthulhu t-shirts rocked up at this trendy nightclub. They were like, just go in, it's fine.
Bedford has never seen the like. But yeah, we had a great time, and as anyone who's organised such an event will know, it was a huge amount of work and everything that went into it, but well worth it. We had a
Yeah.
really good event. So we're talking about Lovecraft again today, and you are a writer. You write Lovecraftian fiction. You're a DJ, you're a musician, and you're a keen gamer as well. So I thought first off, could we start with a little bit about your gaming history and gaming background?
Well, I basically started playing video games as soon as I discovered them. Way back to the Atari 2600 and the what was it first that I had? It was the ZX81 with
Wow.
the yeah with the memory expansion that if you hit the keys too hard it fell out. Uh, the ZX81, I've always said it was a cosmic horror all of its own, because like getting the damn thing to load was was horrific. But yeah, I remember like I think one of my first memorable gaming experiences was 3D Monster Maze
Oh, right.
on
Yeah, yeah.
the old Spectrum, where you're chased by a T-Rex. And there's no sound or anything like that, right? So it's all conveyed over like a little bar of text at the bottom of the screen. So it's just like he's searching. He's searching. You're trying to find the exit, and then all of a sudden it says he is behind you. It's going.
Oh,
Oh! It
nice.
works
Nice.
tremendously well.
Yeah, yeah. And it's fascinating to see how video games have progressed so much over. I mean, what are we talking? 40 years, I guess,
Yeah,
pretty
yeah.
much.
I
Because it
mean,
really started sort of 80s, I guess, maybe late 70s, early
late
80s.
'70s, early '80s.
Yeah,
I would say. I mean, yeah. I mean, it was sort of 1982 was the first haunted house and
right.
things like that. But before that, obviously, you had like the Magnavox Odyssey, where you had to put like a bit of plastic on your screen to make the
Um,
backdrop.
I've not
And it
seen
was
that.
just like two bits of light that moved about, and it came packaged with all these different like things that stuck to the static on your CRT monitor, right? And they came packaged with like cards and dice and things like that. So they were kind of like a hybrid of a board game, but you also used your TV. It
Oh,
was a
that's
very, very
interesting.
strange thing, but that was the first home console. So
Wow. Wow.
never got my hands on one of them though. It's one of them things I keep looking at on eBay,
I bet they're
but I
quite rare now, are
can't quite justify the price.
they? Now, we've mentioned Lovecraft a couple of times and Innsmouth and everything else. For the benefit of any viewers who don't know, how would you sum up Lovecraft?
I mean, I would sum up Lovecraft. Obviously, he was a writer in the early 20th century who pretty much brought cosmic horror. He wasn't the first person to do sort of cosmic horror, but he was the person who perfected it or made the blueprint, so to speak. And yeah, kind of created this wonderful sandbox that all these other people played in with these gods and monsters, extraterrestrial beings that, unknowable and aloof and sort of look at us with complete contempt or don't even notice we're there, you know. I think the essence of it is how small and insignificant we are in the face of these
Right.
weird and vast worlds and all that kind of
And
business.
most people have heard of Cthulhu by now, I guess, the guy with the tentacles and all that. It sort of
Exactly.
seeped into the mainstream. And I guess Lovecraft was one of the first writers to move away from the the supernatural, the
Yeah.
vampires and werewolves and ghosts into this new area, almost science fictiony in some respects.
Oh yeah, very much so. I mean, especially stories like Shadow Out of Time and even like Whisper in the Darkness.
Yeah,
I would say they were more science horror than supernatural horror.
yeah,
You know,
yeah,
they were more science fiction than they are. You know, it's not a werewolf or a ghost or a goblin. It's these are these creatures from dim spheres on the edge of
the
the
edge of the
unknown
universe.
universe.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
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 And someone who's had a tremendous influence on the video games. I know we've spoken to John Houlihan before, who was one of the early pioneers of writing certainly PC games. And he was saying about every game designer he knew back in the day was into Lovecraft.
Yeah, it basically goes all the way back to 1987, pretty much. I mean, there was an Evil Dead game made in 1982, but it was one of those, movie tie-in games are usually crap.
Yes.
And this was no exception. It was a terrible, terrible game. But 1987, it was kind of I like to call it the year of the tentacle, because all of a sudden you got like four different games out that year. You got the Lurking Horror from Infocom, which was a text adventure, and it's tremendous game.
Yeah.
And it's I'm probably going to talk about that a little bit more. You also had Terra a Dunwich, which was an Italian text adventure based on the Dunwich horror,
Right.
and you had the Mystery of Arkham Manor, which was a sort of hybrid. It was almost like an early point and click adventure. You had a little screen with somebody walking onto it and moving about, and you had like a list of commands down the side. That was
Yeah.
on the Spectrum and the Amstrad CPC. And you also had one that not a lot of people have ever heard of. And if they have, they'll have heard of the remake, which came out in 1993 for the Super Nintendo. It was La Place Nomar, which was a Japanese exclusive. And it was a dungeon crawl, like a first person dungeon crawl.
Right.
And the remake was done top down like a JRPG, but it was the same story, totally different gameplay.
Ah,
And basically, the gist of that was they renamed Arkham Nukem because there was all that problem with the rights, and Arkham House
sure.
was and all that, and you also had
Right.
the
Right.
Batman franchise. So they were
Of
like, we
course.
don't really
Arkham
know what
Asylum.
we're yeah. It
Yeah.
was like we don't really know where we stand, so we'll just rename it Nukem. And they go, people have been disappearing. There's a manor house. You go and investigate. It's a
Right.
really good game. But yeah.
And it surprised me when we were talking about this before, because I can remember playing uh, Shadow of the Comet
Mhm.
and Alone in the Dark, of course.
Yeah.
And it surprised me how much further back that type of gaming went, as we were saying before. Um, and you're writing a book on this, is that correct? You're
It is. Yeah. Yeah, I'm writing a book basically about the history of basically it's more like a memoir of video games than it is like I don't know how to describe it at the minute, but I'm having so much fun writing it. Basically, the history of Lovecraftian video games. So I'm going comprehensively to get everything in there. So I mean, I've played and written about over 130 games at this point,
wow, wow.
and I've just got to the last console generation, and you'd think the end would be in sight, but the last console generation is when it really exploded
That's when it really starts. Yeah,
on Steam and all that. There's hundreds of games. And
absolutely.
I'm having so much fun going through them. I dread to think how many hours of research I've done. It's like that you'll always see.
Isn't it nice when you can cover what you want to be doing, class it as research?
Yeah, exactly.
It's great.
Exactly. Yeah,
All
the
right.
hours I've put in, man.
At the coalface.
Yeah, yeah.
So we thought what it would be fun to do today was to hear your 5 top Lovecraftian video games. Uh, and of course, there's a huge amount
Yeah.
to choose from. But it'd be interesting to see what you come up with as your top 5.
Now, yeah, I was going to do this slightly differently, because the way I've been doing writing the book is I've been doing it generation by generation. So
Right.
console generation by console generation. So I'm going to do that because I was thinking when I was writing it that by the end of the book, I wanted to get my Mount Rushmore of Lovecraftian
All right.
games.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Now, as there wasn't much going on in generations 1 to 4, I'm lumping those together.
Okay.
So for that generation, I'm going to go with The Lurking Horror from Infocom from 1987,
Okay.
which was a text-only adventure for DOS and Amiga. And if you're going to play it, get the Amiga version because that version has sound, and the sound adds quite a little bit to it. The plot of that, the gist of that is you're at MIT, which is where the guy who made it, Dave Lebling, was at MIT. So he
Right.
wrote about what you know, and he actually incorporated a lot of the features of the campus into it,
Oh, cool.
which is interesting. And basically, the gist is a guy, he's a computer programmer, he goes to write his essay at the library, and his floppy disk has got somebody else's file on it, and it's like a Necronomicon kind of setup, right?
Right.
And it just goes really downhill from there, and it's surprisingly terrifying for a text-only game. Yeah, really, really good fun. Really good fun. If you can do text adventures, I'd highly recommend it. And interestingly, they included feelies in the box, right? Feelies were like objects, so you got like a map and things like that. But they also included a rubber centipede, and apparently
Oh,
it freaked out people when they first opened the box. Had a rubber.
that's a big centipede.
Brilliant.
Nice. That's the sort of attention to detail I like. And you brought back some nice memories of. A lot of people might remember floppy disks, the small ones,
Yeah.
but I'm old enough to
Oh
remember.
no, yeah, that's what I was doing.
And there was like 10 of them to load a game or something,
Yes,
wasn't it?
that's the one. That's the one.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
Okay, so what's number 2?
We've got. I'm going to go with Alone in the Dark
Ah,
from
yes.
1992 from Infogrames, and it's interesting you mentioned Shadow of the Comet because that came out the year after, and that
Right.
was Infogrames and was originally going to be a sequel, but
Oh,
they
right.
went off and did a more action orientated sequel, which just wasn't that great.
Yeah.
And then there was a third game in the Call of Cthulhu, Prisoner of Ice. That was also the
Yes.
same people. But
Yes.
yeah, Alone in the Dark. I mean, you can't not include that, right?
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that was kind of the first sense you got of like a first person sort of being there game from what I
Yeah.
remember.
I mean, it was the first sort of what you'd call traditional silent, traditional survival horror.
Yeah.
Um, not, I mean, I would say personally that the first survival horror game was Project Firestarter, but that was the first that Alone in the Dark was the first that sort of put all the elements together
Yeah.
and made it. That was the, but again, it was the template for everything that came after. I
Yeah.
mean,
And
without that, you wouldn't have had Resident Evil, you know?
absolutely. Yeah, and it was a very nice mix of puzzles and combat
Yeah.
and a nice level of quite difficult in places, but not totally impossible. But yeah,
I always
and
remember the bit with the night gaunts and the mirror. And if you
yes,
cocked up and broke the mirror, that was it. You were shafted.
yeah,
You couldn't
yeah.
beat the game.
I actually downloaded it about a year or so ago and played it again, and it
Great game.
really did
Yeah.
stand up still. Great. Okay,
Mhm.
so what's number 3?
Next up, we have Call of Cthulhu Dark Corners of the Earth from
Oh yes.
2005,
Mhm.
Headfirst Productions. Again, how could I not? I mean, I think of all of the direct adaptations of Lovecraft, that is the best. Because
Absolutely.
in like with literature, you get the Lovecraftian, which is like a continuation. It uses Lovecraft stuff, but you also have Lovecraftian without the Lovecraft,
Yeah.
you know. But that of the ones that are directly inspired, that's the one that nails it. That Innsmouth scene, it's basically note for note from the story.
Yeah. Yeah.
And yeah, I've described that and the boat scene where again you have the deep ones attacking the boat and
Yeah.
Dagon comes out. I've described them in the past as heart attack simulators because it's just sort of thing,
I
you
think
know.
you're right, and everyone who's played that game says that the hotel scene in particular. For those who haven't read the story, without giving any spoilers away, the protagonist is trying to escape from a hotel room, and
Mm,
various presences are trying to force their way in through the door, and it captures that so well.
yeah,
And I don't know how many times you have to go through that until you figure out how to do it, but it was
you
it
shut
didn't
the
get
door, move
boring,
the
you
thing.
know?
No,
Yeah, yeah.
no,
Sometimes you do
lock.
that and it's
Yeah,
too hard, but that was you keep going and you keep
yeah.
going. and it's such a sense of achievement when you finally escape.
It's that relief when you finally make it across the roof to the other building.
Yeah,
But then but then
but
they
then
start shooting at
right.
you. Then they start shooting at you. It's like crap.
So yeah, excellent. A
Yep.
little bit buggy and glitchy at times in its
Yeah.
day, and it's something that's crying out for a reboot or a remake, I think.
Yeah, I think a remaster would be good. I mean, because I've never played the PC version, but that's the one that has a lot of the issues. Because I've got the original Xbox version.
Yeah,
That
the
version is a lot
Xbox.
more stable.
Oh,
So
excellent.
so people, if you're going to go pick it up, go for the OG Xbox version if you can. Yeah, well,
Okay.
in the seventh console generation, one of the best games ever made, in my opinion, in general, is Amnesia: The Dark Descent
Uh-huh.
from Frictional Games, which was released in 2010. You play a guy called Daniel who wakes up in Castle Brennenburg in Bavaria, and got no he's got amnesia. There you go. And he's being pursued by this shadow, which is like a fleshy, fungusy kind of thing. And
Oh,
there's the gatherers. And it was a first person survival horror game. So it plays like, like Dark Descent, but you never get weapons. You're entirely helpless. And it was
oh
one of the
wow.
first
Oh,
games that ever did this.
that's unusual, isn't it?
And there's a really good sanity mechanic as well because he's got nyctophilia, so he's afraid of the dark, right? So you have to make sure you light things so he doesn't start freaking out. But if you light things, then the monsters can see you.
Then they can see where you are. Yeah, excellent.
It is such a balance, and there's one sequence in it where you're in the cellars, and there's an invisible creature which you can see because the ripples in the water, right, and the sounds. It is still to this day, I don't think it's been bettered in terms of horror sequences. Great. First time I did it, I needed a change of underwear. Uh, all the other games in the series were great as well.
Right. Right.
Because there was Machine for Pigs, which took it into Victorian era. I don't want to get it too much into the story because it is incredibly deep. It's like they've created their own mythos. It's incredibly deep.
Yeah.
Then you've got Rebirth, and they've just released another one, Bunker, which might actually top Dark Descent in terms of being terrifying. I
Nice.
didn't think they'd ever do it, but I just
But they
played it,
did.
and it's brilliant. If you do play Amnesia: The Dark Descent, go on Frictional's website because there's a PDF. They released a little book of short stories that went along with it
Oh, that's
that
good.
add backstory
Ah, right,
and
right, right.
little side stories, and reading that along with it, brilliant.
It will deepen the experience.
It
What a
does,
nice
yeah.
touch that is.
Yeah.
Okay, then. So, what do we have at number 5?
Now you see, I'm struggling here because in the eighth generation there was a lot,
Yeah.
and there's two that I would say. First one would probably be the Sinking City,
Yeah.
which was open world detective investigation Cthulhu mythos. The fact bonus points for using one of Brian Lumley's creations as well, so bonus
Right.
points on that,
Yeah.
which is a great game. And also there was Bloodborne from Software,
Yeah.
which was it was the people who make Dark Souls. It's Souls like, it's hard as hell, sort of fantasy, almost sort of grimdark kind of feel to it, but it's like a Victoriana kind of setup and these beasts and monsters. And again, it's got an incredibly rich backstory that I could not do justice to here,
Yeah.
but that's another good one. So I think for me, I would say Sinking City just because it's more my kind of game.
Sure.
But I know a lot of people would probably say Bloodborne.
Right. Right.
Yeah. And yeah, so that would be it. And for the current generation so far, obviously I can't make a full-on decision yet.
Yeah.
There's two contenders, which is one is the remake of Sherlock Holmes: The Awakening from
Yeah.
Frogwares, which is just tremendous. And the other one is Dredge, which is a Lovecraftian fishing game.
Oh, that's the fishing ones, isn't it? Which I've seen. Which,
It's
to be honest,
amazing.
the screenshots. This is not. It's quite basic
Oh
visually,
yeah,
right?
yeah,
But
yeah.
yeah, the gameplay is captivating.
It's yeah, and it's the atmosphere more than anything.
Yeah.
They nail that atmosphere, and the fact that by the end of it, not everything has been explained. Just
Nice. Nice.
it keeps you going. Yeah,
which is one of the pillars of weird fiction for those who haven't read it before.
absolutely.
Quite normally in detective novels like your Sherlock Holmes or that kind of thing,
Hmm.
everything's wrapped up nicely. In weird fiction, you never quite know exactly
Yeah,
what's gone on, which is part of the allure of it.
yeah. It's the game, the only game I've ever played which sort of captures the same kind of weird feeling as Blackwood's The Willows.
Right, right, right.
So yeah,
Yeah.
I loved it. I absolutely loved it. When I picked it up, I was like a fishing simulator, but it's tremendous, absolutely tremendous.
And if we were on a sinking desert Pacific island, or perhaps a rising one, and you had to choose just one game you could take with you, what do you think it would be out of any or all of them?
Oh God, that's really tricky. For me, probably it's either Dark Corners or Amnesia.
Right, right.
Yeah, yeah.
Excellent. Well, thanks for that, Tim.
No, no problem, matey.
And I know this is a subject that we could talk about because, as you say, you've already hit over 100 games, and there's probably about the same amount again,
Probably, yeah,
and they continue to be coming out as well.
yeah.
So, do you have a rough idea of when the book might be ready or published?
Well, I'm hopeful. I'm hoping to have it completed by the end of November, sometime in December.
Oh, okay.
Um, I'm hoping to have it completed then, and then obviously it's just a case of how long it then take to be published.
To put it
Um,
into production,
yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
So basically, I've got a couple of bits and pieces I need to do now, and then once they're out of the way, I'm going to get the last two sections done. Should take me about a month each.
Excellent. So, of course, we'll do an announcement here when that is ready, and we'll put the links up below to Tim's site for his various other projects as well. I do recommend you check out his books and stories if you're into weird fiction. There's some
Thank you
excellent
very much.
collections available. Thanks for coming in, Tim. Pleasure to talk to you as
My pleasure.
always.
My pleasure, sir.
So, thanks, folks. Do let us know your favourite Lovecraftian video games, or if there's any you think Tim might have missed out of his list of his expanding list. I'll be surprised if there
It
is.
is ever expanding. Yeah.
And as always, if you're enjoying the channel, please do like, share, and subscribe. And I'll see you next time.